Welcome back. I hope you had a good break and nice time with this great food. We will continue now with the Permacultural institution and Aneta Rostkowska. To shortly introduce her again a little bit, she's a curator, she has a writing practice, a knowledge production. In her curatorial work, which is a very experimental one, in her practices, she works with politically relevant narratives that emerge from carefully constructed sensory environments. Aneta studied philosophy, economics as well, and art history in Krakow, in Poland, in Heidelberg, and in Frankfurt. She worked as a curator at the Bunker Sztuki Gallery of Contemporary Art in Krakow, at the Academy of World Arts in Cologne, a very, very amazing institution that unfortunately closed last year. And yeah, she is the co-director of Temporary Gallery in here. And now I'm saying things that we already know. So thank you so much, Aneta, to tell us more about the Permacultural institution, which was a very important starting point also for our coming together. She shared an essay on that with us, and this is how she started to gather us all together.
Thank you, Victoria. Let's see. When I was preparing for this symposium, I did a kind of analysis of different things I did that involved fictions, like different types of short stories, poems. And I realized, I was not fully aware of this, that very often in the curatorial projects I was involved with, there was this fictional element. And one example is actually this. I thought I can share it with you because it corresponds nicely to the writing exercise that Lisa did. It's basically a flyer of the Baltic Triennial, whose one edition in Krakow I co-curated. It was in several locations, but this Krakow iteration I curated together with Virginia Januszkiewicz, and this is a drawing of artist Maris Bischoffs. And it was actually the exhibition we curated in Krakow was inspired by a short story of one of my favorite writers, China Mieville. And we wrote, instead of writing a curatorial text, we wrote basically continuation of the short story. And the second image, I think, is also quite a good image for our symposium. You see there is this little person that jumps into this field of lines, talking about leaps into the unknown and reimagining and trying to create chaos and control it a little bit in terms of different concepts. And I was basically, I realized that very often when there were some difficulties, I was using fiction to kind of manage them or go around them. For example, already during my curatorial studies, we had one artwork in our project in Amsterdam that was kind of, I would not say censored by Stedelijk Museum, but we got 1 week before the opening, we got information that we cannot show it. And it was an olfactory installation, and museum was scared that it will land on the artworks from the collection and remain there forever, which was very absurd, but still. And then for our publication, I basically wrote a short story about journalists visiting this museum and with the artwork installed. and how this whole artwork destabilized the museum and created a lot of chaos. So that was one way of kind of dealing with this situation, but also a temporary gallery. We often, whenever the budget allows it, we publish this RISO booklets, and I always had a feeling that it cannot be just, curatorial text, that you can also access exhibition through fiction, and you can have different types of texts in the exhibition booklet that helps you to experience maybe, or that are like introduction to this exhibition, but a more fictitious one. Or so, for example, for Floraphilia, Revolution of Plants, we had 6 poems by an amazing botanist and poet from Poland, Urszula Zajączkowska, or we were commissioning short stories, for example, for the solo exhibition of Rim Al-Hadi, a short story by Haytham El-Wardani, and somehow we always try to work with different writers to kind of navigate this whole situation of having a text about the exhibition, what exactly this means. Then I recalled a task I got once to write a text for an exhibition catalog about an artwork that was not ready yet. I came to the artist studio and the artwork was in pieces, and I already had to write for the catalog, because the catalog had to be ready for the exhibition, and I didn't know what to do with it, but I wanted to write, of course. So in the end, the idea, I wrote an interview with a non-existent curator that basically found the work of this artist many years later, of course, after this exhibition, in the storage of the institution, and it was a box with pieces. And this curator spent a large part of her life trying to figure out what is this artwork about, what it is. So basically she had the same situation like me, but not before the artwork was created, but afterwards. It was so much fun to write this. I also want to mention one project by a Cologne-based artist, Jan Höft, where we basically not forced, but commissioned people working in call center to do something that they usually are not supposed to do. We had a project with a scarf that had symbols of 2 competing football teams in Krakow that hate each other and really, have regular fights. And this scarf was hanging on in Krakow on a special steel railing that Jan designed, and there was a phone number on it. And we commissioned one of these virtual offices. I don't know if you ever used it. This woman actually, and her only task was actually not to give any information about the project, but all the time repeat, "How can I help you?" And there were some very weird conversations that she had. But then in the end, we realized that we actually don't know what happened in this project because we didn't have access to these conversations. So Jan commissioned basically a series of short stories that reimagined this, and one of them was a kind of a reverse Romeo and Juliet, and basically in which the 2 families order the youngsters to marry, to end the conflict, but they don't want, and then for this I wrote a letter of resignation of this woman working in the call center, and kind of this kind of a narrative that after participating in this project she could not do her job anymore because she found it very pleasant to withdraw the information and not to not to communicate actually, and she couldn't do it anymore. So that's somehow the fiction was always used, I think, to react to some circumstances that were a bit unusual. One other context in which I was using fiction a lot is I'm actually running another art institution in Krakow called Center for Contemporary Art Wawel Castle. This is our logo. This is my co-director Jakub Wojnarowski, and it's actually an institution that is parasiting on a big castle in the middle of the city, one of the main tourist attractions in Krakow. And we basically claim that our institution is there and our collection consists only of ready-mades. So all artworks are, are claims basically by artists, by living artists that basically claim that they did different things in the castle and that they, I don't know why to open once again. So some of them are quite complex, but this one of the more simple ones is the one in which the artist claims to plant many of the plants that are growing in the walls of the castle, and she presented a special scientific method how she did it, with a mixture of seeds, fertilizer, and soil. So it's basically a collection that is a collection of stories, and it was a reaction to the fact that this place, which is extremely conservative, Catholic, and loved by Polish right-wing movements, that they don't allow any contemporary art into its spaces, and we decided to kind of conquer it with these narratives. But now actually there is a new director there, and there is more contemporary art, so maybe they will invite us. I don't know, we'll see. I prepared also a writing exercise for our symposium that is inspired by one of my texts, but I think we will see if we manage to do it. I don't know if you feel like doing any more writing exercises. There were quite many of them already. Yes. Yeah, in this talk, I basically want to present a kind of a sketch of some kind of a model, but I don't know if we can talk about models because every institution is different, and I actually really like the variety of art institutions. I don't think that all of them should follow the same concept or model, but I guess I wrote down this summary also for myself to kind of understand better what I was doing, and maybe also to explain to the others a little bit, or reflect on my own practice. So it's not any kind of academic contribution. When I was preparing this talk, I was also thinking about what was actually the trajectory, but it's more interesting, I think, for me than for you. But it's all it all starts somehow in some maybe a little bit random biographical components, like I don't know, moving into a flat with a big balcony and starting to grow plants, and then all the things that followed. But I don't want to bother you with that now. There is, what I think is important to mention, that there are many sources for this thinking, and many authors that I kind of accompany me since a longer time. One of them is Robil Wall-Kimmerer. I don't know if she's if you are familiar with her work. She's a scholar, a writer. Has also Native American roots. And this book was actually translated into German, Braiding Sweetgrass. And she also wrote a really great book on moss. And in one of my talks, I actually fantasized a little bit what it would be when art institutions were inspired by mosses and lichens, how they grow. But then I discovered that there is a meme account on Instagram that makes jokes about the role of moss in curatorial thought, and I thought, okay, maybe that's it, Another person that I really whose writing was important for me is Michael Marder. He's a philosopher writing about plants, and he's a very bold philosopher that kind of constructs his whole philosophy from this kind of a point of view of taking a close look at the plants. I managed to invite him several times, and he had some really nice contributions to the program of Temporary Gallery. on our YouTube channel, where our live stream also is. He also had a talk on moss. And also a very nice presentation for our summer seminar about the keys and the keys of Hildegard von Bingen. Yes. I don't know if you know this book. That's a very special book, Hospicing Modernity, by Vanessa Machado de Oliveira. It's a very unusual book with exercises that you can do yourself. And it's about hospicing the idea of modernity. It's about saying goodbye to at least some aspects of modernity, which might sound a bit utopian, but I think it's worth trying. She now wrote a second book, actually, because this book became extremely, I think, popular, and it became an important book for many people. Yeah, so these are, I would say, some of the inspirations, and of course, working with artists. For example, I want to show you actually one work, and that also refers to the tables that we are using during our symposium. These tables were produced for this exhibition, Florophilia, Revolution of Plants, where after investigating the colonial history of plants, which is and botanical gardens, which is very, very dark, I kind of thought, let's try to go in a maybe a little bit more optimistic direction of learning from plants. And in this exhibition, this is the room in which we are now. We had these tables on which all the artworks were presented, and they looked like altars, laboratory tables. And one of them we presented a work of Milena Bonilla, which was inspired by the herbarium of Rosa Luxemburg. And Milena basically interpreted the plants in the herbarium as healing plants, helping to improve mental health. And I really, now we don't, of course, have access to this artwork. She prepared a kind of an online version of it with seeds, photos of seeds, and for example, agrimony seeds. They sing the song of decentralized, non-hierarchical life. Or, for example, these ones, boxwood, hired to perform in urban landscaping after being used to curb tropical fevers that come as a side effect of colonizing ambitions. Something to talk about if we need to rewire the past, evergreen. So these are also like little poems, and the centauri as a call for civil disobedience and so on. And I thought it's a really beautiful artwork, and these plants somehow on this table, it looked like some kind of a, I don't know, thinking model or some kind of a support structure for thinking. And this artwork actually led me to think that, you know, in order to maybe put modernity into hospice, we really have to develop some strong alternatives. We have to, I know that it sounds a bit utopian and maybe even absurd, but I think we maybe need some stronger points of reference, some worldviews that could form a stable base on which other elements of our thinking will be, to which they will refer to. And this work kind of showed me maybe a little bit the direction that it could be something related to nature, to ecology, to thinking about plants not as only decorations, decorative elements of our houses and Instagram celebrities, but more as subjects or actors that can guide us. And that's how I arrived at permaculture. But as you see, I'm not very... I think we should just use anything that we find useful and not just, you know, become some kind of follow just one theory. I will not speak too much about permaculture, just some basic ideas maybe, but I just want to mention that there's also a little bit darker history of permaculture related to the sources that were used to construct the theory, that some of the ideas came probably from encounters with indigenous cultures, so this it has to be decolonized, basically, the permaculture as well, I think. We, in fact, after this exhibition, I turned more towards this institutional thinking, and we organized several events, a temporary gallery, but also in other locations where we where we were basically testing how much permaculture can help us. And as you see here, we have this circle. This is from a very popular image related to permaculture that shows this kind of core elements of its ethics, care of the earth. I don't have to explain this. Care of people. It's a lot about access of people to natural resources and social relationships as well. And fair share, it's basically about setting limits on consumption and sharing the surplus resources. And then there are these 12 design principles that you can basically apply to anything. You can apply them to, of course, gardening and agriculture, but you can also apply them to institutional thinking. And this is what we were doing during some seminars that we organized here. Maybe to explain a little bit what this term permaculture means. It was conceived in the 70s by David Holmgren and Bill Mollison, and it was, to quote them, the denoted consciously designed landscapes which mimic the patterns and relationships found in nature, while yielding an abundance of food, fiber, and energy for provision of local needs. People, their buildings, and the way in which they organize themselves are central to permaculture. The original permaculture vision of permanent or sustainable agriculture has evolved to one of permanent or sustainable culture. So it's a whole design system that kind of should guide us towards a sustainable future. And this prefix perma means indicating a fixed state, and it's a clipping of permanent, and that's how we come to the whole topic of sustainability. To maybe and I don't know, I can maybe talk about some of the principles, but I will take one of the principles that I really like is use edges and value the marginal, and you can, for example, apply it to the space of the institution and reflect on what are the edges of the institution, what is the external appearance of it, what is the marginal in this case. So they are, but what we basically established during different discussion is that these principles are very general, and if you want to apply them to the art field, you still need to have the whole history of this field, history of modern art institutions in mind, and in a way you have to really combine. They can inspire you, but you have to really combine them with very specific types of knowledge related to our field, the social history of art spaces as well, economic histories. So it's so they can release interesting chain of associations of ideas, but you need actually much more. So this is, and maybe one important thing to mention, for me, the whole journey related to permaculture, there was this artwork of Milena that was important, but also many years ago, I noticed that I found online information about a course in Berlin that German curator Nicole Wolf was curating, and it was in 2019, and it was course Soil City Solidarity, and it was a kind of about relation of permaculture to filmmaking and cultural practice. And then I knew her and I contacted her, and she recommended to me the permaculture teacher that worked with them, Alfred Decker. And then later in the pandemic, Temporary Gallery organized an online course in permaculture for cultural practitioners. And it was really amazing course. We got more than 100 applications. In the end, we did 2 courses, 2 groups with Alfred. My colleague Nada Rosa Schroer, who was here yesterday, with whom I worked on these topics is a longer time. She moderated the second group, and we had really beautiful exchange with artists that grow plants, that work with plants, and we were really discussing like what this fact of working with the soil does to our artistic and curatorial practices. And we had very hybrid, conversations and amazing exchange in the chat window. I still have some PDFs with the infos from this chat, and it was super interesting mix of very practical advice, like what to do with the snails. I have so many snails, and this kind of considerations on a more philosophical or institutional level. It's also I don't have so many photos, but you see that there is this it's very practical attitude. Where can we grow on cemeteries, warehouses, and industrial sites? And also during this course, I somehow reconnected with an artist based in Rotterdam, Juli, who is also a gardener and created many gardens. And later we also worked together. This is a workshop in a community garden in Cologne. We had a collaboration with the community garden. Some people from the garden, they also participated in our course because there were some artists there. And this is a summer seminar that the workshop was part of Nada's project at Temporary Gallery, important to mention. And this is a photo of the summer seminar that I curated with Nada, Rosa Schroer, and Julia Harman at Stiftung Künstler-Dorf-Schöppingen. And it was about permacultural thinking institutions. And Juri, actually, we had this idea that we want to work in a garden during the seminar. And Julia Harman, the director of Künstler-Dorf, really went for it, and she invited Juri for many workshops. And when we arrived in the summer, there was a fantastic garden there that I think still exists at Künstler-Dorf. I don't know if you know this institution. They have a great residency program. And this is Juri. He was collecting seeds and interpreting them, and created this kind of a big artwork. Sorry, it was a little bit too quick. Yes, this is our group working in the garden and collecting potatoes, harvesting potatoes. We had great food by Paula Erstmann, who was also here yesterday. And this is a very interesting set of tarot cards. I think yesterday one of our speakers mentioned tarot. This was actually developed and used by artist residency research group that participated in the symposium. And this is a set of tarot cards that you can use for reflecting on the position of your institution and where do you want to go. And it's a very nice tool that can be used. Okay, so this. I think it's still accessible actually online. After this seminar, Nada co-edited with Julia a kind of publication as a PDF that consists of different contributions of participants and Yes. And we had many different discussions, and we also had working groups during the seminar. It was, I think, around 8 days. The group was very international, it was quite interesting because the groups formed around the main interests of the participants. in relation to their work, but also art institutions. And we had a very big group that was interested in the topic of pleasure. Like, it really says a lot, I think, about the state of the art system. So one group was pleasure, and another group was about slowness and how to slow down in the institutional life. Yeah, so here are some, of course, photos of this. We were doing moon rituals. It was a very interesting group. Many people we didn't know before, but somehow I also see it during our symposium. People that are interested in this topic are very often very nice people, and somehow the spirit of this seminar lasted for a long time, and we until now have a WhatsApp group, and we share things there, and there are ideas for coming together for DJ Demos also visited us, Michael Marder. Yes, and also it was the beginning of the collaboration with Sourgrass, which is a curatorial collective from the Caribbean. After the seminar, they visited temporary gallery, had residency there, curated exhibition at temporary gallery, and we are still in touch, and I hope this collaboration will continue. Yeah, this was a very interesting workshop for with Juli, where we basically were creating a cocktail that is whose function is to nourish the soil. And then we were spreading this cocktail in the garden, and it looked like this, Catholic procedure of putting holy water on different elements. I sometimes make this joke that if something replaces a religion, it will be permaculture, because there are rituals, like everything is there, But of course, I don't want any new religion to emerge. but there is this potential, I think, we had to steer this for quite a long, which was very meditative component of this workshop. We had a microscope. And somehow, it was a very uplifting experience. Many people that participated in this were very disillusioned concerning the art system and really on the verge of burnout. And somehow, through the fact of coming together and finding allies, I think it was very empowering. And this is also what I think about at some point of organizing this kind of events, I thought we cannot do this anymore. We have to implement changes, but let's not theorize too much. I was like thinking that it's like an escape into the theory. That instead of changing the institution, you organize panel discussions about how you want to change it. And then the whole energy goes into these panel discussions. So I kind of thought we cannot do this anymore. But I realized actually that these gatherings, they have this function of showing you that you have many allies, because very often, like working on a daily basis in art system in Germany, you might feel a little bit alone sometimes. And these gatherings, they kind of give you, creates a kind of a support structure that you can use in the future. So I hope also in our symposium maybe, something like that. We are creating something like that now, I hope. Yes, so that was the summer seminar, and now to the concept of the permacultural institution. Talking about the new words and terms, I think it's a kind of a topic that reappears in different contributions, and we just had this quite interesting word, museum instead of museum, and it's interesting that these proposals reappear, as if we all felt that the language we use is like some kind of it's like it dooms our thinking, it's like this ghost that is constantly hovering above us, and it kind of limits our thinking. The word project. I remember during my curatorial studies, we were so tired of this word that we started to talk about endeavor, like not project, but endeavor, And then you felt like, I think like, Game of Thrones probably influenced our thinking, We felt like some medieval knights, that are venturing into new territories and so on. But I also coined a new term that I have no idea if it makes sense, but I thought it can maybe useful, and it refers to the notion of capitalist realism by Mark Fisher. I don't know if you're familiar with this. This capitalist realism is basically a kind of a widespread sense that not only capitalism is the only viable political and economic system, but also that is even impossible to imagine a coherent alternative to it. So capitalist realism is basically, we are at the end of history, nothing better than capitalism can emerge. And I thought there could be an equivalent to the art word, you know, but I don't know if it's a good word. Maybe somebody would have a better idea, and I thought we could have this neoliberal art realism, you know, like NAR maybe, and it would be the widespread sense that the art system as it is the only viable art system, and that is impossible to imagine a coherent alternative to it. And one of my intentions would be to really fight this. And I think through this tool of fiction in this symposium, I think we managed to detach and distance ourselves from some elements of this system. And that's maybe the fantastic thing about art, that it kind of enables you to do this. So basically, in this context of permaculture and sustainability, what is also, I think, what I observed in Germany is that there is a lot of thinking about ecological sustainability, but not enough thinking about social sustainability, and even the fact that they are separated from each other is a problem, I think. And I did a kind of a special training for sustainability managers that was paid by the city of Cologne. It was really a great course. It was quite interesting because the way it was conceived was that it was about only ecological sustainability, but almost every speaker that was invited was talking also about social sustainability, because you cannot separate this. If you want to change the way your institution works, you have to think about your people that work in the institution. How, do they have capacities to change the way they work? Are they willing to do it at all? And so on. Like, there are many examples of this connection. And what I found also quite interesting is and then, there are these big programs, like, for example, Kulturstiftung des Bundes had this Zero program, but also only about the ecological sustainability. Yeah? And so I would really advocate to get rid of this separation and just say that it's, there is only one sustainability, and it has all of this in it, and it always has to be thought together. Also in relation to art institution. Exactly. So what would be this, permaculture institution then? I would say that it would be an institution that is guided by ecological and social sustainability. And it would be an institution that asks itself how it, as an art institution, can contribute, to, for example, concerning the social sustainability, it will be a creation and existence of a equitable, diverse, connected, democratic community that provides a good quality of life, for example. This is, using some of the definitions of sustainability. That would be the question: what is the role of art institution in all of this? Another aspect that I think would be important to involve, there is this great book that Anna-Lee Davis from Sourgrass recommended to me, Malcolm Ferdinand, The Colonial Ecology, Thinking from the Caribbean World. It's a great book about how ecological questions have been separated from the history of colonialism and slavery. And it's a really book that argues against this separation, and that really, advocates the talking. But some of these topics became more, luckily, part of the mainstream. But it's about, basically reconceiving our relation to the countries that suffer from climate change more than countries in Europe, for example, and to kind of my question was, can I, as a director of institution, incorporate it into my curatorial thinking? If we collaborate with the curatorial collective from Global South, from the Caribbean, and we, when the collective curated a film program at Temporary Gallery, they showed a documentary about a hurricane. That they have all the time now hurricanes because of climate change. So how can this, can we as a small art institution, but in a quite wealthy country, somehow respond to this? Is there a way of creating and maintaining relationships with institutions in the Global South in which we redirect some of the resources we have here to them as a response to a climate debt that has been created? So these are questions that, maybe it will be on a very small scale, but I think it is actually possible. So what would be this permacultural institution? So now I basically, like some of the speakers, I have a list of features, and I think it's not a complete list, but it comes from the reflection on the work of Temporary Gallery, I would say. And the first thing that has to be mentioned is that it's an institution that has a very hybrid identity. That's an institution for me that not only presents very traditional, even sometimes, types of art, but these activities are accompanied by different type of projects that are aimed at social sustainability, that the exhibition with these artworks are constructed in such a way that these elements are embedded into them, that basically there is a kind of syncretism that accompanies the thinking, that it's a mix of very different layers, very different things. And maybe you have a you have this exhibition, but there is someone cooking at the gallery, and it's a very, a very flexible identity. But we already experience sometimes in our work that there is sometimes, if you move the institution more towards community-oriented projects, then sometimes in this kind of a general appearance, people forget that you also actually curate exhibitions. There is a problem with staying hybrid, that people usually want to, pin you down, and they want to classify you. Or we constantly have this, with Lisa, we talk about this, that we have some projects that have artistic elements and maybe something that we would qualify as socio-cultural, but I think we actually reject this division. And then for art funding, it's like too much socio-cultural. In Germany, there is this concept of Soziokultur. I didn't know it before. And then for the socio-cultural funding, they think that we are this elitist art institution, that. So there are problems related to staying hybrid. Here I also meant some kind of a hybridity in relation to institutional structure. Of course, we are very small, so this is much easier for us, but also in bigger institutions, this separation from curatorial departments, from educational departments, it's a kind of a, I think very often it doesn't work at all. Many years ago when I worked in Krakow at Bunkier Sztuki, I was employed in education department of this institution, and we convinced our director to merge both departments, and he did it because the educators were complaining that they get too late informations about what the curators are planning, and then somehow the educational activities. We even stopped using even this word, they were just artistic activities, and they were part of the exhibition, and they were conceived together with curators, and even and this whole division between curator and educator became really not relevant. So that's what I mean concerning this, mixing things together. I would say that permacultural institution would also be a translocal institution that builds up a web of local, national, international connections, that pursues routing or grounding strategies that at the place where it's located, but it's also creates this kind of a more international community. This is what Alistair Hudson, I think, was also talking about, that it the temporary gallery, Lisa and Paula created this whole mobile kitchen project where the mobile kitchen is being transported in the neighborhood, and there are different events. So this is a very good example of a routing strategy, and of course many institutions developed similar ones, but that would be a very important element of the identity, I think, of the institution. Another important aspect would be the talking about decentering, decentering of the curatorial authority, and this is basically what we observed here. That after some of the projects we are doing exhibitions, we have groups of artists, but also just different members of the community that still meet and that still maintain the relation that was created during the exhibition time. For example, for the exhibition that me and Lisa curated together, Blue Binding Ribbon, we experimented a bit and created a kind of a temporary collective consisting of artists that work with textiles from Cologne and the region, and this group is still meeting and has creates their own program, and the natural extension would be to basically enable this group to curate their own projects at Temporary Gallery, and some of them are already involved in the costume workshop and so on. Also Claudine, that is present here, participated in our activities in the community garden, Neuland Köln, and then the group of artists working there, they created a beautiful archive of the seeds of wild plants and artworks inspired by it, and there was a very nice pop-up exhibition at Temporary Gallery, and now they are planning a new project together. So there are plenty. We have this narrative exposure therapy group that I mentioned yesterday. We have more and more people that work with the mobile kitchen this year with the open call. So basically the idea would be to kind of acknowledge that this is happening and give space and resources to these groups. Also around Nada Rosa Schroer, there was a very interesting group with Camilo Pachon and other artists, some of them from the Global South, but active in Germany, a kind of a group dedicated to ecology with this decolonial aspect. The question I'm asking myself now is how to make this happen, basically, how to do this. Can a funding body in Germany give us money for the groups without knowing what the groups will do, Of course, the elephant in the room is Documenta 15 with their extremely progressive curatorial concept. Unfortunately, in Germany, not discussed. But of course, that was a kind of a move in that direction, in fact, distributing resources, organizing assemblies. But then, how to do this? Are there my ideal would be that the group decides by themselves what they do, and if they want to give a fee to each of them, no problem, but maybe some of them don't need a fee because they have jobs somewhere, so this money can go elsewhere, but the group should basically decide about it. And then can we do it simultaneously? Can all the groups be active here at the same time? That's also a question. And should they work independently of us, or should we collaborate closely with them? That's also, or different cases, like this and like that. So these are the questions that I'm asking now. A big inspiration is SPOR initiative, an institution in Berlin that also works in this way, I would say. But they basically share their space. And here I wanted to share a documentation of a series of workshops that I curated together with Nazda Rosa Schroe. That was also a project of Medienwerk NRW, whose director is with us. Here it was dedicated to these different aspects of institutional transformation. So there was a whole weekend about collaborating with climate activists. There was a whole weekend about degrowth, and the whole weekend on grounding strategies. And we had a very nice lecture by Antonia Alampi, director of SPOR initiative, who was basically telling us how they work at the institution. And yeah, so that's just a little remark. The permacultural institution, I think I would also love if it would be a communal institution. And then it's very interesting that I was trying to avoid talking about audience and more talking about the community, but now I see there is a new term, constituency, that I still have to learn. And this would be also the next step to kind of change this thinking about, people coming to the institution as that they are only like passive consumers, and we are basically delivering the content as curators. Yeah. What we also very often do, that you also can now witness this at Temporary Gallery, we have very often food in our events, and this is also what I, for example, saw at Sowie a lot. This is, yeah, or even at the opening of HKW, I will never forget all this, like, food trucks and amazing food that was served, and this is super simple, but in the art system, it's very common that at the opening, suddenly a group of people disappears because they go to a restaurant, and then there are these questions, am I invited? Am I not invited? Yeah, this kind of exclusion works already there very often. Do we really need to do this? Of course, it's nice to organize, a dinner for a small group of people at your place. But does institution have to do this? Like why not just offer food to everyone? So we have sometimes very long openings, because we feed people, and then they stay with us for a very long time sometimes. But here, important remark. Funding bodies in Germany usually don't cover expenses for hospitality. Like even for this symposium, I don't know exactly how we will do it. But okay, this will be recorded. I have to be careful. But there are rules there are some rules, related to the funding, related to the food. And when you read these rules, it looks like a conceptual artwork. It's very complicated. So how to navigate this? It's also a question. Of course, the topic of having a team with more diverse backgrounds, and we also spoke about these aspects yesterday. It seems obvious, but still, if you look at how it looks at many institutions, it's very often quite homogenic. Can we influence it as institutions? I think we can a bit for sure, but it's also a question who studies curating, who studies art. It's, like you very quickly actually leave this field of leave this space of a singular institution, and you land into all other elements of the art system that kind of condition your work, basically. Another aspect that would be very important is that institution that is workers-oriented, that it supports self-organization of workers, that it initiates, of course it's more relevant for bigger institutions, the Temporary Gallery, but it actively initiates emergence of bodies that represent people working at the institution, and it can also be initiated by the director. I don't see any problem here. Maybe there will be later, difficulties and tensions, but I don't know why it should be always this, situation where the workers are scared and they don't initiate anything because they are scared of the director. I think the directors can also be interested in having discussion partners related to that. Self-reflective. Here I mean that the institution can also actively support self-organization of cultural workers and different forms of activism within the art system, and different types of engagement concerning working in organizations that represent us, towards funding bodies, so all this kind of a collective, bodies that we can enter. This is, of course, a very, very big topic. We already mentioned this topic of slowness. Anna Lee Davis from Sourgrass Collective is using this term slow cultural work. Can we implement it? Can we curate less? Can we create more space for institutional transformation? Also a big question, do the programs, do we really have to do so much programming, because I think I have sometimes impression that it comes a lot from us, it's sometimes the funding bodies, they don't require us to do so many events, but we initiate this, and then, how to slow down, and how to, why we don't ask our team, what is the maximum that the institution can do, Actually, our collaborators, our coworkers, they know very well what is the limit, yeah. But they are very often nobody asks them. That's the problem. And another element that we also worked actively at Temporary Gallery with is working with this white cube environment, how to, going into the city space, but also actively transforming the exhibition space, questioning this hegemony of this white cube that for many artworks is actually not the best environment, and that for many people actually has this feeling of hospital, when you enter art space, or you feel that you are some kind of alien body there. Actually, one of my friends that worked at National Gallery in London told me that he asked me if I know when they clean the gallery spaces, what do they collect the most, and he told me that what they collect is, when they clean, is pieces of human skin, So it sounds a little bit creepy, but I thought, wow, actually the visitors are making the exhibition spaces, more human, more imperfect, and it's totally fine. And at Temporary Gallery, we experimented a lot with exhibition designs. We are now starting a research project on more inclusive exhibition spaces, collecting ideas, how it can look differently, and how we can kind of, get rid of this. I even with my exhibition designer, I remember we had some heated discussions because he, didn't want to have chairs in the exhibition because it kind of contaminates the exhibition view, or speakers. There are many, constraints there that are, related to keeping this white cube and taking care of it. Then, of course, the topic of accessibility comes in, and then this question, should it be something that you add to the events, or how to make accessibility the core of the curatorial work? This is still something that, is very, very important for us, and we are still on the journey to change things here. And the topic of ecological sustainability, I don't want to talk about this because there is a lot about this in Germany. And to finish, I just want to sketch this kind of a broader context that it's very, very quickly you see that when you want to change some singular elements of the institutional work, you arrive at these larger structures that condition our works. I was thinking, we are all into networking in our field. There are these networks that we create, but maybe we should stop creating networks and start to create a movement. Like something that you don't have to, apply to be there, or it's nobody can invite you, but you can be a part of it. And I was thinking, coming from Poland, in communist time in Poland, there was this symbol that the Polish underground was using, and it was this part of electric circuit that is responsible for resistance in the circuits. And they were wearing it because many of them were workers working in factories, and they had these elements, and they were cheap, and they were wearing them. it was like a symbol, you know, that you are opposing this communist propaganda and this communist state. I was like thinking, yeah, maybe we also need a symbol, you know, for this movement. I'm fully aware how utopian and naive it sounds, but I was thinking, you know, how to spread the ideas, you know, how to make them grow, and you have to kind of resign from, I think, controlling them. You know, you have to put them on the table somewhere, but then maybe, you know, they can form some kind of a movement that can aim at renewing the art system and different elements of it. Since we are now in this kind of a mushroom state of the art world, we had animal stage, then plant stage, now the mushrooms. I wonder what will be next. Insects. I would love insects to come, but I think it's too hardcore. I think there will be no insects. But I was thinking, you know, since we are still in the mushroom stage, maybe we could call it the mycelium, you know, that it's a mycelium. It could be like a little mushroom, but maybe it already belongs to the past, you know. Maybe it should be an insect. Like something, you know, that is a little bit uncomfortable, you know, for us. And then it would be basically the goal of this movement would be to apply these different principles of this other type of thinking, permacultural thinking, or, you know, we can use any other names, to different elements of the art system. We could ask what would be permacultural art school. What would be, you know, what would be permacultural biennial? Maybe there will be no biennial. Maybe there will be, you know, every 10 years something. What would be funding structure that adheres to this? You know, we had with Lisa, we often talk about it, that we actually want to repeat projects. Yeah, like Lisa curated this great costume workshop that happens here, where we also use these tables, and they. Costumes for Cologne Carnival are being produced, like this, more like non-racist, non-stereotypical costumes. And we actually want to do it every year, yeah. But then we have funding bodies that tell us, but we already supported this. And somebody, I think, spoke about it yesterday, that we, you know, that we actually the funding bodies, they always want new projects, and it's capitalism, of course. It has to be new. Yeah? But we actually want to practice the old good formats that create trust and continuity in the institution. Yeah? So we can also think about, you know, what would be the permacultural funding system, you know, and how this could be redesigned, or art prize, or curatorial studies, or art residency, you know, what could be, how we could kind of redesign different elements of this system so that they support each other, and that they create a kind of atmosphere in which we can all grow and support each other. Yes, so I think this would be end of my talk, and I think we don't have time for the exercise. But maybe, I don't know, I can say what you can do, and then you can do it on your own, or, you know, if we find time today, we could do it. I was once asked to write a text for a catalog of an art prize in Czech Republic, Jindřich Chalupecki Award, organized by the different bodies in Prague. And they asked me to write a text about artist Tomasz Kajanek, who was very, I would call him the gonzo artist, you know, very much of the spirit of this CCA Wawel Castle that I was telling you about earlier. And I thought that he has a kind of a, you know, for example, he designed an exhibition that was a portable exhibition taking place in a wallet. And then he was thinking about what you really don't want to have in the wallet, and it was meat. And then there were, you know, different meat products that kind of were in the wallet. You know, it's totally absurd but funny interventions. And what I did for the catalog, I basically wrote a Wikipedia entry on Tomasz Kajanek, because I think he didn't have one at that time. Maybe he already has. And I was thinking, yeah, what, you know, why should we finish on 2018? You know, we can actually continue, you know. And then I talked to him about different artworks that he thinks about making. And then we created a Wikipedia entry that runs until 2052 with many future artworks. And even now we are actually in the stage of his life that he disappeared from social and artistic life. It's called the Big Disappearance from 2025 to 2029. So he's, you cannot contact him now. And there are many, interesting artworks, and it was a lot of fun to work with him in this way. And so I thought I never used this fictional methods to reflect on institutional concepts, but it could be actually a nice exercise to write a Wikipedia entry on your institution, on the project, and kind of project it into the future, like maybe 10, 15 years, and kind of, write, Kunstverein Siegen did this in 2012, and then 2015, and then 2030, 35. And this could maybe also be an interesting exercise because we know all this format of Wikipedia, we are very familiar. And it could be fun, to do maybe this kind of projection, using the language of Wikipedia. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aneta, for your presentation and insight into your thoughts and practice. Are there any questions, comments to Aneta?
Thank you, Aneta. It was very inspiring and so exciting to hear how much fun you have with your work. And I love the absurdity, and it's really amazing how you combine all of these very pertinent questions of need and of fairness and of justice and of sustainability, ecological and human, and also to have so much fun and to connect with these people that you're inspired by, and you're very inspiring to me, and I think to a lot of people here, by sharing these ideas. And I'm glad you wrote the list, but the list also seems quite open, so I'm curious to see how it develops. Thank you.
I was going to just say something about biennales and Prague, because I was at the opening of the Matter of Art Biennale last month, and I think in talking to Teresa, who's one of the curators, she was talking about how, of course, like transit works quite differently, and often I think maybe more as with this permacultural thinking already in some way, thinking about sustainability, thinking about in-residence work, thinking about situatedness and how to have this long-standing involvement. But they were also talking about how funding does not fund that, and how the Biennale structure actually is one that is increasingly recognized as something that organizations will fund, that, like, especially in the arts. And I'm seeing this also in South Asia, in Asia otherwise, where there's much more private money in the Biennale, in the arts, and not so much state money, that the bigger the art fair, the more funding private institutions, organizations can and will put into it. So I think also with thinking about state funding kind of decreasing, and thinking about how with European governments also becoming more conservative in that sense, how do you balance what gets funded very explicitly, what gets funded with what is more experimental? Because I think that is always the question, and what is the outward-facing script and the inward-facing script, and how do you balance those?
What you mean balance those as an institution, or in general in the art system? I'm not sure I understand.
Mm-hmm. How do you use the budget to do actually what you want?
We are being recorded. I don't know if we can. But what I see is that exactly that this budget cuts, they kind of create a situation in which the bigger institutions are still, get the funding. They, of course, also have the cuts, but they have to be kept. And then what is suffering is this middle, the middle institution, the mid-scale, like we, like sowie. So this is a question how to respond to that. And I'm always like in between two approaches. One is that we have to fight. We have to unite with other organizations. We have to, collaborate with unions and so on. And we have to fight for our, fair share in this, in the funding. But on the other hand, the other strain of thought is we have to also become realistic, and then, the salaries that we are paying at temporary gallery, I don't know if any new employees would accept them, So maybe the gallery should be run by a collective, and we should all have jobs elsewhere, and we should use base funding, okay, for the rent, yes, but we should use it for projects, if we can, So maybe we have to kind of actively also try out other ways of working to kind of adapt to this, But it's a kind of a double-edged sword, because if you are too obedient and compliant, then they will continue to decrease the funding, if they see that you are still getting by, Like we had some events at Temporary Gallery that were funded through tickets, and the tickets covered the cost of the event, But then, of course, the accessibility suffers. Although we had also some opportunities for participating for free, but not everyone wants to ask if they want to participate for free. So all these things. So I have a feeling that we probably have to do both, and I would say I'm not a person that is particularly strategic. That we I don't know who was saying it recently, that we sometimes I think Lisa, you were saying it to my students that you don't have photos from your early projects. That sometimes we are doing good things, but we don't even document them. That we are sometimes maybe we have to be a little bit more strategic concerning visibility, inviting people, and not focus only on the curatorial idea, but really incorporate these other elements, like working with politicians. But then, of course, this also eats your time, and then you have to basically do less in order to do it differently. I don't know if I answered your question, but maybe the other participants want also to say something.
A very simple question. And what do you think is the relationship, the possible relationship between a permacultural institution and autonomous art?
By autonomous
would you like
art,
me to
you mean
elaborate?
like traditional art forms, or what exactly do you mean? Traditional artworks like painting, sculpture, or you mean artists that don't want to be political? What exactly do you mean?
Well, I mean it in the broadest sense, but that art is autonomous art is art which operates on an artificial respirator. In other words, it is art which the price for its non-engagement in life worlds is that it is somehow financed. It's financed through a very complex relationship between the institutions and the market. So, for example, small publicly funded Kunstvereine go out of their way. They're underfunded and overworked. They go out of their way to promote the work so that then it can be exchanged as a commodity in the private sector by the private sector gallery. So it operates. This is art which eschews use value, so it agrees to not have traction in the real and does not operate in the real. It operates within the autonomous sphere of art, but the price that it pays for that, yes, it is art, but it's just art. How would a permacultural institution engage with that kind of futility?
Basically, I was reflecting on this question as well a lot, but I think I made a distinction between the role of the institution and what artists do. And I think artists should do whatever they want to do. They should, if they want, the artist, whose works we are presenting here is, she has a quite interesting, lifestyle that can be very inspiring, very autonomous lifestyle. But she's not guided by any kind of idea of usefulness. I don't think so, We would need to ask her, of course, but that's not my impression. So I kind of feel that maybe, artists should have their freedom, and some of them will naturally adhere to this kind of a more engaged direction, and some of them will. I also will not do that, but I also know artists that actually do both and have different trajectories in their practice. Also very interesting. But maybe we as institutions have different obligation than artists. I would love to discuss this with you. I'm not sure if I'm right. That maybe as an institution that receives public funding, we are actually. We have more obligations because we use, tax money, and everybody pays taxes in this country. So in a way, our mission maybe should also acknowledge this fact, yeah. And then I believe it would be interesting to feature different types of art that, are attractive maybe for different people, or work with topics that, invite people to your team that have, backgrounds and curatorial interests that, reflect the changes in the society, reflect in Cologne, I read 40% of inhabitants of Cologne have migrant background, 40%, maybe, not first generation and so on, but it's something, yeah? So how does this affect our institutions, yeah? So I think I would make a distinction. And that's actually the element of the lexicon of usership that I was struggling with, the criticism of the autonomy of art. That I kind of still value this kind of artistic explorations that doesn't set itself any goals. That I see a lot of value in this kind of practices as well. Yeah. So that would be my answer. It's different in case of institutions and different in case of artists. I don't know if it's a good one.
Super interesting conversation. Time-wise, we need to continue with Tamara and Steven. I thought, am I wrong with the schedule? Looking at your expression in your face.
Yeah, right now, and then we will continue these discussions because also the contribution of Paulina Seyfried is related to those issues. So there will be also time for discussing more.